You're listening to Career Interrupted, and I'm your host, Joy Foster. I have a very unique and special guest today who has had a very interesting career trajectory and some really great insights that she's going to share. So, Sue, welcome to the show. And let's start by talking about your career interruptions, which in many ways you look at as opportunities. But tell us a little bit about your career path up until now.
Hi, Joy. Thank you for having me today. Well, I started off as a school teacher, and I'm now a picture framer and I teach picture framing. So, along the way, I worked for a computer software company, but it wasn't straightforward. So, I started off as a school teacher and I taught maths, and I was qualified to teach maths and physics to 16 and 17-year-olds, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And at the time, they were wanting to work with computers. And we had to open an old cupboard and get out dusty computers and set them up. And I have no idea. I'm going to name names, and they're all dusty computers. And this is a long time ago. So the school, the PCC, or the equivalent of the school board, actually gave me quite a lot of opportunities because I would quote for new computers and they'd say, oh no, you need to go bigger. And eventually they built a room and we ran the whole school through it. So it was quite an explosion. But this was back in the days when spreadsheets it was all very new. Anyway, at the same time, a friend of mine was working for a computer software company, and they were looking for a teacher because they were sick of consultants who would join and then leave, and they wanted somebody who loved teaching. So they invited me to come for an interview. And I used to say to them afterwards, you didn't know how much I didn't know. And they went, oh, yes, we did. You didn't know a thing. But what they wanted was a teacher. And so I taught for them, and then allowed me to travel through Africa because I was working in South Africa. So Southern Africa, Botswana, Zambia, and then actually even going to conferences in America and in Europe. And I worked with them for about 4 years. And during that time, there was quite a lot of upheaval in South Africa, the elections and the votes and things. And there was quite a lot of violence. And I experienced some violence and was hospitalized. And so after that, I'd kind of thought, I just need a break. I need to get away. But I was still traveling, and I realized that the company did these 3-month rotations. And so I said, oh, I'll come and make tea for you. Can I come and just spend some time learning and working with you? And they said, absolutely, come. We do these. You can either go to San Francisco or to London. And I chose to work in the office out of London because they were working on the software that I knew. And in the end, they got me a 3-year work visa. So I came for a year, and at the end of that year, I said, now I go back. And they went, no, you're on the team. And what a job it was. I traveled the world, and it was wonderful. But what's really interesting for me was that I read this book ages ago called What Color is Your Parachute? And it says that, you can't decide what the end job is. If you just take little steps along the way, they're almost like zigzag. And that's exactly what happened to me because I started writing courses and then actually training the trainer sessions. So I was teaching again. And then I started working with a product management team. And so then I was doing seminars for them. And so each time, some of it was what I knew and some of it was new. So even joining the product management team, I kind of said, I want to join the team. And they said, sure, join. And then I realized I didn't have a clue what I was going to do, but I knew the software. And so I kept going and kept going. So it was a wonderful journey, actually. I did that for 20 years.
That's incredible. And it's so interesting, the interruptions that you pointed to. One of the interruptions was technology coming into schools, right? And then another interruption is actually violence in the country that you're in, and you need to leave in order for you to recover and feel safe. So it's very interesting that those career interruptions still kept you going on this trajectory. Now, when in this whole career trajectory were the stakes the highest for you? When was it the most challenging to transition careers or change things for you?
I think there's 3 places. I can remember the first day I was going to be teaching computers and going, I know so little. I only know what I've learned. And I remember one day thinking, I'm going to be sick. I'm not going to go in and teach. I just didn't want to teach. I was terrified because they were all computer geeks that I was teaching, and I knew this little bit. And then an old guy said to me, you know the bit I need. doesn't matter, and I found that the older the people were, the more generous they were with allowing me to teach them what I knew. So that was fabulous. You'd think me arriving in England with 300 pounds and not knowing a single soul was a high career thing or stake or whatever, but no, I didn't really worry about that. It got higher later on when I really felt that I ought to leave.
So there was
And
a part of you that was wanting to do something else, but you, at that point, you had a good salary, you had a great
yeah,
job.
yeah. I had a nice house, car, and I was fiercely independent, and I'd been successful. But actually, I felt that God was saying I needed to leave. And I even spoke to someone, and she said, "You're trying to straddle two jobs." And the prayers came out saying, if you want to walk on water, you've got to get out the boat. And if you know the reference, you've got to actually take that step of faith and know that you're going to be okay. And I was really reluctant. I switched companies, but I still maintained the salary level, but I still felt I was in the wrong place. So yeah, that's when the stakes were highest.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So here you've got this great job, great salary, and you've also got all these, car, house, all the expenses, and that's where you go, oh, I don't know if I want to make this change. And it felt like a leap of faith. What was your biggest fear about? I mean, talk to me a little bit more about the doubts and fears you had as you were in that position debating that decision.
Well, I was in my 50s, and they say at that stage, nobody hires a grumpy 50-year-old woman. We're kind of, once you leave that job, they'll never employ you again. It was interesting, though, because within 2 years, I'd been offered two different positions and approached, and I was kind of going, well, they like this 50-year-old or something. And I think that there's an element of saying, yes, we get set in our ways. Yes, we get a bit, why would I do that? I'm not going to work the 18-hour days anymore. But also older people have experience and can help. And so in both positions, I was employed because of experience. The one was completely different from what I'd done before, working in social housing. And that was just such an experience. But that was a 3-day week, and it was a 9-month contract. And then after that, I was made redundant from the job. And so I had to sit back and go, now I've been forced out of the boat.
I love that. So in the end, what you were supposed to be doing, the ability to do that came available to you.
Yeah. But I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And lots of my friends had spoken to me, were they going to set up nursery, garden centers, or we all had weird ideas, and I didn't even have those. I was thinking that I might do photography, and I sold a few pictures. But of course, everyone's got a phone these days. Everyone's doing photographs. And so that's a really tough world to break into, the photography. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. But I was doing woodwork and carpentry and drawing and all of the arty things, and starting to frame my own pieces and framing for friends. And my husband said, why don't you give that a go as a business?
So that leads me on my next question. In all of these career changes and stepping stones and moments of decision when it came to your career, what was the most surprising thing that came out of it?
That I'd ever be a picture framer. It was never on the radar. And I tell you, not even in my early 50s was it on the radar. I used to run a cable from the house down on a long line and have a light propped up, and look at the back wall now. I mean, it was never like that. It was working amongst the spiders and the lawnmowers when I was starting to frame originally. So
Yeah.
it was, if I'd known now, I would have taken the workshop down. It was an old garage, taken that down and built a bespoke space. But these things evolve, don't they?
Yeah. Well, I love that. So, and also not only that, not only are you a picture framer, but you teach other people how to be profitable picture framers, how to actually do this for a living and to generate income from it.
Yes. I've taught most of my life. I've taught people things. I've taught people to crochet. And when I teach them to crochet a square, they end up doing this wonderful, lacy thing and say, look what you showed me to do. And I go, I never showed you that. So I think that I'm the beginning of people's journeys. And what I think is that I like to say that I show them that it's possible. And I show them that I did it and that I could earn enough money to pay my mortgage. And I would encourage people who are doing things like picture framing or learning something that you go to lots of teachers, that you learn bits from everybody, that you don't just stop at the beginning of the journey. But I think it's a wonderful journey to be on, and you can control it as much as you like. But I think that I'm helping them in their little dinghies, and I'm pushing them out, saying, off you go now, you can do this. I showed them the beginning.
I love that. And what's the core lesson that you've taken away from all of these opportunities that you've taken and how it's all worked out?
I think the biggest thing is take the opportunities. It definitely gets harder when there are more stakes. When the stakes are higher, it gets harder to take opportunities. But I think the biggest thing is that people may say to us that, once you've made this decision, there's no going back from it. And I think that you can. I think that there's work out there, and I think that you can try something, and if it's awful, then I've got a little piece here that says, you won't see it. In the end, what we regret most are the chances we never took.
Mm.
And I think it's a little scribble that I wrote down. Fraser Crane, I don't know if that's the person who actually originally said it, but I think that we should take the opportunities. And I was given opportunities all the time when I asked people, could I work for this or could I switch to that? Each time I was given the opportunity and people allowed me to do the switches.
Yeah, but I think that you said something really important there. Each time you asked, right? So you were also open to opportunities. You were open to making changes and, open to trying new things. So I think also there's a proactiveness in there, which is really important for people to hear as well. It's not like people just handed you upgrades to your career. You saw, oh, hey, this looks, I'd like to do that. I'd like to do that. Could I do it? And actually spoke up about what you wanted. And I think that's something that women still today struggle with, is really speaking up and saying what they want and asking for what they want. Is there a motto that you live by?
I think that I was going to say that the one that I now want, that I think that I now live by, is abundance. And that came from you. That was one of the early courses that we did together. And when people come to me and say, why would you be teaching somebody else picture framing? They're going to take away your business. And I remember one framer saying, no, they're never going to take away my business. I'm that good. But I don't think it's that at all. They're not going to take away my business because there's so much. People are always getting married, going on holiday, having babies. There's so many pictures to frame, and you can frame anything. You could frame your grandmother's old silver spoon tea set. There's so many things to frame. And so I think it's, if we observe the world from a perspective of abundance, and I say that carefully because I know that lots of people are not living an abundant life, but there is abundant love, there's abundant happiness. And I think that if we live with a view of abundance, there's availability. I'm a bit nervous about saying that, but I do think that if we live with abundance, that would be good.
No, I don't think you should be nervous about saying that. I do think, we both come from a Christian background, and I will say that in the Christian faith over the years, it definitely has been this debate in the Christian faith as to, whether or not you should follow the abundance ministry or whatnot. And I think that when you start to understand what abundance really means, I said to someone the other day, if you're not sure about abundance, go outside and see if you can count the leaves on the trees. See if you can count the grass on the field. See if you can count the hairs on your head. You can't. And it's that idea, and I look at you and I look at what you're doing. It was so funny because I got to come and spend a day with you, and we framed, in fact, the pictures right behind me. You can sort of see it here. We framed my son's art, which when he was 10 years old, he painted this beautiful painting, which looks like a Turner. And we found the most gorgeous frame. Sue's really, really good at matching up frames with art. And my son made the frame that went with it. And it was a wonderful mother-daughter experience for the two of us, And also for me, it was showing him a career opportunity. Partly because he's a very creative, art-driven individual. I wanted him to see that that's a way to make money, that if that's what he wanted to do, there was an opportunity there. But, you think there's 8 billion people in the world. There's just no way you can, do 1 million frames as an individual. And what I loved about when we were in your workshop is you have a board on your door with the number of frames that you want to do in the year. And you were laughing because when previously you had a goal that was much higher and every year you met that goal. And then this year you'd reduced it quite a bit because you're thinking about sort of building in, a new lifestyle alongside your business, or, lifestyle changes, giving yourself more time. And what was so funny is you said, and look, I've already met that goal and it's still not even the end of the year. So, I think the thing is you're not wrong in the sense that you're not going to be the right teacher for every single person.
No.
You're not going to be the right framer for every single person. And when there's 8 billion people in the world, there's a lot of opportunities there, a lot of students, a lot of clients, and there's abundance for everyone, because literally, that you can't serve everyone. And actually, the more people that are there to serve, the more choice people get as well as to who's the right person for them. The Upanishads have a quote that says, "From abundance was scooped abundance, and yet still there remains abundance." It's like the concept of, if you go to the ocean and you pick up a bucket of water from the ocean and you go and you dump it into your moat, of your sandcastle that you've built, you could keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it won't make a dent into the ocean. It's that idea that I do think that abundance is there. And I think it is biblical as well. I think if you do study it, it is in there. But that I think it starts with the mind. I think if we think
mindset, it completely is.
Yeah, it's a mindset. If we think that abundance exists, we will see it. If we think that lack exists, we'll see that. And our brain will switch on to whatever we want to focus on. So I think it's a great point and a great motto to live by. Oh, thank you, Sue, for coming on the show. Now, if someone wants to find out about your profitable picture framing program, how would they do that? Where would they find you?
They could either go via Instagram, because there are links to my website, but on my webpage, which is River Crane Framing, there are links to sign up to my newsletter, and there are links to get on the wait list for next year's Profitable Picture Framer course, which is an online course. Otherwise, I teach in person in the workshop.
And you also have a guide to what you need to get started in picture framing. Is that right?
I do, because when you're starting out, you could be, which end of the scale do I buy my equipment on? So I have an equipment list, which is categorized into different areas. So that's available to download as well.
Now, on a side note as well, because I know that you have done the TechPixies program, what was useful for you about doing some of the training from TechPixies when it came to social media, et cetera?
Well, it was interesting because I kind of sweated about that a little bit to start with, because was it free originally, your kind of boot camp? Was that right? So it was just lockdown and we were doing the boot camp. And I was agonizing as to whether I would even do social media, because that was part of my job, was being on, I had a blog and all of that kind of thing. I know these things, but there was something more that I wanted. So I joined, and I liked all of your mindset stuff, hence the abundance conversation. And so that was really nice, and putting a plan in place. But also out of that, I actually started my mail list. So that was the biggest thing for me, was a lot of people, try and increase their Instagram following, or their, back then Twitter following, or whatever it was. And you were saying that needs to drive to your mail list. So I started a mail list, and I mail monthly. I know you say I should mail weekly, but I mail monthly. But I've been doing that for 4 years, mailing monthly. And then about 3 or 4 months ago, I ran ads for the first time. And so those are things that have come out of your courses to try and encourage me to take the next step and the next step. I'm not as bold as I was when I was younger. It takes a long time to do these things. But I've been running ads and increasing my mail list and mailing my clients. And so it is nice, because they all reply to me. I have a relationship with a lot of them, know them. I know them.
I love that. And, you are one of our success stories in BBS, in terms of you'd never run ads before, and you're getting people onto your list, a couple people at a time. And, and it was growing nicely and steadily over the last 2 years. And then we sort of gave you the challenge of, let's see if we can, grow this a bit faster. And in a very short period of time, you doubled your list.
I know. It's bonkers.
It is bonkers, but it's so fun. And those are opportunities. You take opportunities. I just thought it would be fun to just talk about that for a moment. So Listen, I love your story, and I'm so glad. And the funny thing is, you guys, I mean, I've known Sue for a while because she's been in our programs. She still is in our programs. But it was when I went to her house and went into her workshop and was showing my son that framing was an option as a career and doing all of that, that I started to hear a little bit more about her story. I didn't know the backstory. And when she told me all this, I thought, we got to get you on the Career Interrupted podcast because you've got a great story and one that I think a lot of people get a lot of value out of. So thank you so much for coming on, Sue. I really appreciate
You're
it.
most welcome. Most welcome. Lovely talking to you.
You as well. All right. So how fun was that? I mean, what an incredible story. She was a teacher and she ended up being on the project management team at a major software company. And then she packed it all in to be a picture framer. And now she's teaching other people how to do that too. And it just goes to show you may not know how it's all going to work out, but as long as you are taking steps and moving forwards, the path is revealed. So I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. And it was fun as well for me to get to bring on an alumni of our own programs. I love talking to women about their career interruptions, but it's particularly special when I talk to them about their career interruptions and how TechPixies might have helped them in that career trajectory. So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy next week's podcast. I really appreciate you. And again, thanks for listening. Have a great week. See you next week.